Okay, my computer says 9 o'clock. Excuse me, it does say 9 o'clock because it's Eastern time, but it's 7 o'clock. Someone call to order. It's 7 o'clock. Jason, you want to call the roll?
We're gonna have our clerk now do that for us.
Oh, okay.
Chair Caius,
I am present.
Vice Chair Kohler.
Here.
Commissioner Lucan,
Here.
Commissioner Rodoni,
Absolutely.
Commissioner Berto,
Absolutely.
Commissioner Chu,
Here.
Commissioner Burke,
Here.
Commissioner Hilliard,
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
We have quorum.
Commissioner Murray, sir.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
no
Commissioner
problem.
Murray.
And then
Oh, since Berto is missing or late or not here, Commissioner Burke, you'll be stepping in for him.
Okay, so we have a quorum.
yes.
Okay. Agenda review. So does anyone wish to change the order of any of the items on the agenda for tonight? I see no hands raised, no complaints. Continue then. Public open time. I don't see any public, so no public open time. Consent calendar. Have 3 items on consent tonight: minutes from June 8th, the ratification of payments, and resolution 2314 for the fee schedule.
2314 is public hearing, not consent
Oh,
calendar.
Sorry, then you're right. It's only 2 items in. Minutes and ratification of payments.
Move the proof. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Public hearing. Approval of resolution 2314 for the fee schedule. Jason?
Thank you. In front of you in your package, you have an updated fee schedule. I normally would yield to our budget chair, but since he's not here today, I will just take over the full presentation for you. The budget committee met in March to have a discussion about our budget, and every 2 years we do an update to our fee schedule. So they took that item up in committee as well. What came out of that committee was basically to keep the status quo of how there's 2 parts to our budget. One is how many hours are we spending on the average application? Because we do an average application fee schedule rather than charging per hour for each individual person. We just come up with a flat fee for everybody. So we do an average of all of our applications in the process. Staff didn't view, and the committee agreed that there need to be any changes to that other than one, which is since our last time doing the fee schedule, based on the commission's request to have our deputy executive officer take on some different responsibilities besides just the MSR. He's taken on some of the responsibilities under the application process. So we reduced the amount of time I spend on applications and increased the amount of time he spends on applications for a couple of the basic application processes. So you will see that I think I go from 60 to 55%, and he increases his percent by 5%. And so on that side, everything stayed the same other than that one aspect. The other side of the fee schedule is, how much do we pay staff? We purposely hold off on doing any approvals to the fee schedule until we know what all of staff salaries are going to be. You will see later on the agenda that there is a discussion about my contract, my new contract. The fee schedule represents what's in that amount. So if the commission, for any reason, shape or form, is not planning to approve that contract, you should hold off on doing this item until you do my contract and we have a contract in place. But it gives the assumption that you will approve my contract later on in the agenda. And so all of our salaries are in there. It also includes benefits. And so we roll all that together, throw that into the fee schedule. You see the worksheet there, but there's an Excel spreadsheet that goes behind all that whole worksheet. And that then spits out what our new application costs will be for the next 2 years. We could do this every year, but the discussion was had for the newer members, at least the discussion was had a while back that every 2 years seemed to make sense because the amount that it would go up from year to year, we would spend just as much time and energy redoing the fee schedule and having to pay for public hearing notices and all that stuff as we would actually get increased costs. So we decided every 2 years seemed to be a little bit more reasonable of a time frame to do it. So this will reset our fee schedule for the next 2 years. It will take effect 60 days after today because that's what was required by state government code. So starting in October, that will become our new fee schedule should you approve it tonight. The committee unanimously moved it to the commission with the understanding that I would update the salaries when they were better known. And now that they are all known, You now have that in front of you today. That is my report.
Okay, Greg?
Hey, Jason, so just checking on cost of living increases, you mentioned that the EIR, as an example, as CEQA has moved up 4.35%. So is that kind of typical? We're kind of at this 4.35%.
Where
Okay.
it actually has increased more than that, but why it's not showing up in the fee schedule is you've taken 5% of my time or 5% of the staff time that is used and moved it from my salary to Jaren's. So the actual cost, if we'd kept things the same as it was before, and Jaren and I was doing as much as I was doing before, and Jaren was doing less, you would actually see a higher percent increase. But because we reduced or shifted some of that over, it actually meant that the increase on the ratepayer side, or in this case, the applicant side, wasn't as high as it could have been had we not done that shift in staff, so in who performs the staff duties for the applications.
Okay, and then EIR is CEQA and NEPA, correct? So expect the cost to be.
Yeah, well, if we're actually doing like that is if we're doing a negative declaration, or it's like the very low end stuff. If you're actually doing an actual CEQA review, which we have not had to do since I've been here, we would actually go out to consultants, and you would pay the third party applicant would pay whatever that consultant charged to do that work.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
And I will note, since you brought up the third party stuff, we do list in the application or in the fee schedule third party fees. Those will change whenever the third party fee changes. We don't actually control that. We just list it so people have an awareness of it. But as soon as we become aware of a change that occurs, the one kind of change in third party fees is we used to pay the county to do our GIS mapping update stuff. We now have a third party vendor that does that. So we simply switch that line item in there to them, just so folks are better aware.
Barbara?
Yeah, so just a follow up on the CEQA question. So the state clearinghouse charges a certain fee, and is that included? I don't.
That
see it
is-
on the outside
yeah,
agency.
That is under the third party fee. We actually do it through the county. The county gives us the ability to run it through their system. And so you don't see the actual state system on our third party fee. It's actually a county that we pay, and they throw it into the state system for us.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a $50 fee if anyone's interested.
I've paid it through state agencies. It's much higher than that.
Oh.
It's not 50, so you're getting a deal.
Perfect. Glad to hear.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing that there's no public, does anybody want to make a motion to approve the new fee schedule?
I think you still have to open a public hearing, even though there's nobody here, correct?
Yeah, Chair, I would recommend we formally open and close the public hearing.
I'm going to formally open the public hearing. There's no public. I'm going to close the public hearing. How's that? Good.
Perfect.
I'll move approval of resolution 23-14, updating the Marin LAFCo fee schedule.
Okay, Eric, there's a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Barbara, second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good. Okay, next item on the list is Executive Officer Employment Agreement.
Thanks, Chair. And for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to meet yet, I'm Josh Nelson. I'm sitting in for Maul this evening. So the item before you is approval of the Executive Officer's Employment Agreement. The terms and conditions of the agreement are set forth in the staff report. A copy is attached, but just briefly, it's a 3-year agreement. Compensation amount would be $177,625.76. And then the other terms and conditions are consistent with that provided to other LAFCO staff. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments? Greg?
Yeah, so I apologize missing the closed session last time, just on the paid leave entitlements consistent with other LAFCO staff receive. I'd be comparable if we did have like comparable LAFCO agencies, which I think we used before. But it's fine. It's kind of this Me Too with what's consistent with the staff here in Marin, but since this is an executive director position, we often have to recruit for it. We want to make sure that's competitive, and that'd be my recommendation. I'm not sure if that actually occurred or not. Maybe Josh, you can speak to that.
I think I
will
can just step in because we didn't, that's the same provision that's been in the agreement. We didn't change that. So it's been what's been in his agreement. We didn't discuss it.
Right, it's a.
Oh, it looks like Jason has his hand up.
That was actually a request that I made. Now that we are doing our own HR system and we're no longer in the county system, it is so much simpler and easier for us as a staff if we have one benefits package that everyone gets. So we're not having to figure out how to have different back packages. If in the future you're looking to hire a new executive officer and you want to change that, you're more than welcome to do so. I would highly encourage us to keep the language as is for that section. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, appreciate the clarity. I do agree with what Jason mentioned, though. If there is a time in the future to recruit, then we might want to
Sure.
take a look at that.
Valid point. Any other questions or comments? Then I'm going to open up a public hearing. Any members of the public wanted to have a comment? Seeing no members of the public having a comment, let's bring it back to the board. We need to vote on this, right, Josh?
Yes, please, Chair.
So do I hear a motion to approve?
I'd make a motion to authorize the chair to execute the employment agreement.
Okay, we have a motion, second,
I'll second.
Greg, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, election of chair and necessary vice chair. So I'm officially, as of this meeting, once this election is done, stepping down as the chair of Marin LAFCo. I will stay on the commission, but I'm not going to function as the chair any longer. So there needs to be an election. And so, Jason, I'll turn it over to you to manage that process.
Well, actually, as chair, you're still managing the process, but I will give the staff report on it.
Bye.
It is up to the commission to decide who it wants to have as its chair. We did make this in a process in a way where if the current vice chair is moved up, we have the ability to vote on a vice chair today, so we don't have to delay this decision or process. But it's completely up to the commission who to decide. The only restriction is you have to be a regular voting member. Alternates can't be chair or vice chair. So sorry to our three commissioners who are alternates, but it has to go to one of the other members who is a regular voting member. After that, it's up to you to decide.
Right. With that, I would like to make the motion that we appoint Barbara Kohler to be the chair and Commissioner Rodoni as the vice chair.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Well, now it's just comment on the motion second.
Well, actually, yeah, we need to have a comment first before we go to a vote. So is there any comments about the motion? Any comments?
No comments on the motion.
So do you want to make a motion then to approve? So Eric's made the motion.
Larry second.
I'm sorry, Larry second. Okay, didn't hear that. Sorry. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
And I want to thank you, Lou, for your leadership as chair.
Sure.
And appreciate that. And at least based on my
There you go.
my reading of the staff report, you are to continue as chair through this meeting. Did I read the staff reporting?
That is not accurate.
Right.
The new chair starts right now.
Okay, wow. All right, let's move on. Oh, come on. Let's have a-
I'd like to nominate new electors.
So, for some reason, I keep losing where I'm at. I don't know why, but, I can't.
Would you like a paper copy of the agenda?
Yeah, maybe I should because, yeah, I know where we are on the agenda, but I don't know why I keep having to go back to the Dropbox because there's something goofy with what's going on. So let's move on to discussion and possible approval of change to start time of commission meetings and update policy handbook accordingly. Jason, would you like to give the staff report?
Sure. At the last meeting, there was a request as a future agenda item, so we're bringing it into today's meeting to have a discussion about the start time. We currently start at 7 o'clock. You know, why we start at 7 o'clock is well before my time being with LAFCo. So it's up to the commission to decide if it wants to meet earlier or not. You know, the one thing I will say, I did a semi-survey of commissioners to see like, when would they be available? Because many of you have day jobs. And so that becomes, you know, when could you physically get here type of a question. I had some folks that said they could be here as early as like 3, 4 o'clock. Others, you know, that were kind of like the 6 o'clock timeframe. One of the things to keep in mind is you do have at least 2 commissioners who work in the East Bay and one that works in San Francisco. So it's up to you to decide if you want to move it. I know from a staff perspective, we would encourage that because it means we can get on the road a little bit earlier when this meeting ends.
Barbara, can I make a comment?
Of course.
Good, thank you. I'll just tell you, as somebody who I think, besides Stephen, who's an alternate, one of the few, I guess maybe Barbara, you might also be in Sub Bay. But anyway, I'm the one who's in the South County, you know, south of San Rafael. Traffic is a pain. So coming in earlier is an inconvenience. Today, I had to work in Palo Alto. And I went directly from business meetings in Palo Alto to here in order to be able to deal with the traffic coming all the way through. So I would personally prefer this stay at 7 o'clock. My thought.
Others, Commissioner Berto?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I work in the East Bay. Getting off is never really an issue, but I try and limit the times that I have to take from work because especially for the other, you know, appointments I have to commissions and bodies because I want to maintain any time I need to take off work for my council responsibilities. I would be amenable to 6 o'clock. That wouldn't be a stretch for me at all. My commute is reverse both ways. So but 5 or anything earlier like that would be, I don't want to say difficult, but I would be pushing it on most days. And there are some days, like if I have a council meeting that starts at 7 and I have work, you know, I have a presentation before the board over there that I have to be at work at 6 a.m. I will go from 6 a.m. till midnight, you know, or, you know, 11 p.m., something like that. So I try and limit those opportunities for the times that are really needed. I want to be respectful of everybody's wishes. If some people are thinking an earlier start time would be good, like I said, I'd be willing to go an hour earlier at 6 o'clock. I'm kind of a go with the flow guy.
So there are other, Larry, I think, or Commissioner Chu.
Yeah, I'm the one who works in the city, but given that Lou has a 7 o'clock and, you know, Steve is saying 6 o'clock. The earliest that I could probably get here is 5:30, so I don't have a problem if people want to move it up in deference to, you know, your work schedules.
Well, it sounds like others, I know Catherine and Stephen come from Southern Marin as well. I'm not sure where Roger comes from.
I'm totally impartial.
And I think Commissioner Murray, you come from Richmond, is that correct?
I come from the East Bay as well. There's some flexibility. Actually, when I first came on the LAFCo, there's some concern about, I think Jason brought it up, is when my actually district meeting ends and when this one started. So there was some rush to get here. So what my district did, which I thank them for, is to move the meetings to the first and third Thursdays so we could make this second Thursday. So I'm open to the commission and staff to, if that provides some assistance, to move it to an earlier hour. So I'm similar to Roger, what the flavor of the board is here.
Well, I'm
So
just
what you like.
wondering, I think Commissioner Caius made a good point about his work schedule. I'm just wondering if there would be a 6:30 might be a meet in the middle kind of thing, or is that just really difficult for you?
6:30 would be difficult, but I could accept that. Anything earlier than 6:30 would be a significant hardship.
Okay, so,
Barbara?
yes.
I just want to confirm, or we're still planning just 4 meetings a year. Is looking out over the next couple of years, do you anticipate more? Or
It's 6
Oh, six,
meetings.
every other
It's every other month. So it's 6 meetings a year. And I don't anticipate us having to meet more frequently than that,
okay,
other than like the occasional like workshop or something of that nature. But regular meetings 6 times a year seems to be more than enough for us.
gotcha. And if we ever had to schedule something in addition to that, then we would have discretion over what time we would schedule that. That
Correct.
wouldn't be bound by our handbook as far as what
Correct.
time that would have to be at. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm definitely flexible. I've commuted from San Francisco and trying to get back to council meetings. So I certainly know what that's like. So I want to be respectful for those that are having to do that. My preference would be 6, but definitely don't want to institute a time that's not going to work at all for somebody, especially that those individuals have been on this commission for a long time.
Madam Chair, question?
Yes.
Does the discussion of hybrid meetings tie into this in any way?
No, because the rules have changed, so it's not an option for you to do hybrid meetings unless you want to post at your house and do it at your house and let people come in.
Well, for others who might have an issue, I'm just curious.
So the hybrid option applies only to the public. The commissioners, as Barbara stated, need to be here. And in addition to having to post, you only get a certain amount. I think it's 3 per year that you can do that for. So as far as council members, commission members, we are, where the state came down was essentially they want us at the meetings.
I think there's
Yeah, so there are 2 different ways to do a hybrid. So one would be to post your physical location as a meeting location. And then as the chair mentioned, that would mean that if a member of the public wanted to come, if you post at your house, they could come and post your house. There actually aren't numerical limitations on attending a remote meeting that way. Where there are numerical limitations, to Commissioner Brito's point, is there is an exception to those rules under legislation that was passed last year, AB 2449, which allows you to call in from a private meeting location if you can satisfy a just cause or an emergency standard. Both of those are relatively strict and then deal with things like you have an illness, you're caring for a sick family, those sort of things. And there are numerical limitations on the number of times you can do that per year. For this body, it would effectively be
potentially 1.
2 or
I
3.
don't think it would be 2. I think it would be 1.
It's a percent of the
It's-
thing of the
Yeah,
number of times
it's
you meet.
20 or 25% of the number of regular meetings. So I believe it would be 2, but it may be 3. I'd have to double
Well,
check.
let me just share one thing. I sit on a legislative committee, and one of the things that's happening in Sacramento is they're talking about doing special committee meeting to really look at this issue because they feel that there's been abuse of people going on vacation, people on cruises, those kinds of things. So I think for the most part, we ought to be looking at this, that we should be here unless there's some extraordinary reason. And I think if Commissioner Caius, I don't want to create a hardship, but if you're willing to do 6:30, that might be a nice compromise for a few folks.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so do we need a motion for this?
Yes, you would need to make a motion to specifically state what time you're going to start the meetings
So
at.
who would like to make the motion?
I'll move that we start the meetings at 6:30 PM.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Good.
Aye.
Thank you.
I was gonna ask, did we need to clarify in the motion that we need to update the handbook and all
No,
that?
you're-
That was gonna.
That's taken. The next item on the agenda is after the last commission meeting, I had a couple commissioners and I'm gonna semi-throw them under the bus. It was Commissioner Rodoni and Commissioner Lucan that asked us about why we're not doing hybrid meetings and wanted to have a discussion about that as well. Well, it wasn't directly mentioned in the meeting. It was mentioned after the meeting, so I included it on today's agenda. Just as a little bit of history on this, when I'm talking hybrid, I'm talking for the public to be able to join us, not for you to join us remotely, but for the public to join us remotely. We originally decided not to go to hybrid because at the time when we were making the decision, we still had not found this meeting space. This meeting space has the ability to do hybrid meetings. So since we are here and have the capabilities in this room, we could do hybrid if we wanted to. The other factor that was into it is reality was, especially for those of you that are newer, during the 2-3 years of COVID, we had a total of 2 people who showed up to our meetings that were not applicants for an application. Both of them were other LAFCos that were just interested in what we were doing. And since we were meeting remotely, they decided to join for a meeting. They would not have done so or did not really need to do so otherwise. So we just don't have, as you'll see today, a lot of public wanting to be joining these meetings. It's up to the commission to decide. It does create a little extra work for staff when we're doing this. If you decide to go hybrid in your staff memo, I did note 2 questions I wanted you to address if we do go hybrid. First is, if we are hybrid, Legal counsel could join us hybrid, you could join us remotely. They don't have to physically be in the room. We would save a little bit of money. We do pay for them to drive here and for their time driving here. So there is a little bit of a cost factor that would be saved if you let that happen at the same point in time. That means you don't get to have your legal counsel in the room. So if you show up before the meeting and want to ask them a question, you don't have that same capability. So there's the pros and cons of that. The other item I wanted you to discuss is we normally encourage applicants to show up to the commission meetings. Do we want to encourage them to show up in person, or if they show up via, a hybrid remote system, is that okay for you? Like I said, there's no legal requirement for them to be at a meeting where their application is being done. But if we had hybrid, some of them might choose to join hybrid rather than coming in person. And I'd just be curious what the commission's general philosophy is. So when applicants ask me in the future, I can tell them the commission prefers X or Y in that discussion, should you go hybrid. That is my report.
Okay, so any questions of staff? Commissioner Luca?
I have one. So is our meeting right now on Zoom? We just don't allow the opportunity for people to participate, or are we not on Zoom right now?
We are using Zoom because that's how this room connects to the monitors and stuff like that. Because in a little bit, Jaren's going to actually do a share screen, and that's the way we can get that onto the screen so you can see. So we are using Zoom right now, but it's not open to the public. The public can't get into it and actually join us at this moment.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're not necessarily having to introduce a brand new technology. We kind of have it. It would definitely take some staff time to do, because we need to make sure that we put the links on all the agendas and have the process for people to join.
And we would also have to have staff that's monitoring. Like right now, I have Zoom open, but I'm not monitoring. Is someone else trying to join us because everyone's here?
Gotcha.
So we would have to have, like, in all likelihood, I'd probably toss it to Jaren, since he's at that end of the table. He could probably monitor Zoom while he's also monitoring the meeting.
Makes sense.
And
Great. Thank you.
Just to clarify something for folks who don't meet in this room is set up to do hybrid. So there would be no technology needs on our part. It's already set up. We do hybrids for the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. And so that's not an issue for us. And just maybe one thing to share is we don't have many members of the public attending. So it's not like where we see in our council meetings, or probably some of your special district meetings, where it's really quite a lot to keep track of that many people that are on Zoom versus who's in person. So I think it wouldn't be that challenging. Just a thought to throw out there. But other questions of staff? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Berto.
So, we're on Zoom. It's not being broadcast to the public, but is it being recorded?
Yeah, our meetings are recorded on our put on our YouTube channel, and then we put it on our website. And I think Marin TV even occasionally shows them on its channel when there's nothing else going on.
Right on. Thank you.
Commissioner Murray?
Just so interesting, kind of post-COVID and expectation of the public. I think we've been consistent in terms of meeting in person. I do think it's important for everyone to meet in person here in Marin. These are Marin issues. But I think there's a request for the public to do this, and it's particularly important that we have a space here that could function like that. But we are a small LAFCo, small county. Jason indicated our historic track record in terms of participation in the public in our meetings. So I would say just to continue the way we are with the items being recorded, they could see the meetings. And then it does, as Jason mentioned too, provide us the necessary flexibility to meet with legal as things come up that aren't necessarily directly within the meeting. And the public may not recognize that as well. So these may be things outside the scope of a closed session or regular meeting item, but it gives us that once every 2 months opportunity to discuss things directly with legal.
Well, maybe I can just ask a question, because if we weren't having a closed session, any questions you have for legal are matters for the public. And if you talk to them beforehand, it wouldn't be recorded. So I'm not sure. Could you clarify that a little bit?
I might want to forward that on to our legal counsel.
Yeah, And I don't want to speak for Commissioner Murray. I think the point is just that if there's a question on an item that they're asking for clarification, wouldn't necessarily want to ask that question in open session for whatever reason, there's at least an opportunity to flag Mala down before the meeting to get some clarity.
And that's before the meeting, so it's
That's correct.
before it would be.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
Craig's question is getting to my question of, do you want legal counsel in the room or not? Or do you want to let them join remotely should you go hybrid?
Well, I think we can take that on separately. Commissioner Smith and then Commissioner Berto.
As the new person, my feeling is actually, I think we should make these meetings available to the public easily. I mean, people might want to observe just for their entertainment or interest. Or they only want to hear a little bit about one item. To come all the way down here for, 10 minutes or so, frankly, is an inconvenience. And why wouldn't we do it if we have the ability to do it? But I also might suggest that we require applicants to be here in person. At least one of their team, if there's multiple people, be here when they're presenting something on their own behalf. That's a little different,
Okay.
little different kettle of fish.
That's a good point.
And I don't have a problem with taking legal advice on Zoom. I think that's fine.
Well, we can, so your point is well taken that, and I misunderstood Commissioner Murray. So you prefer that legal counsel is here so you can talk to them before or after the meeting. Great. Commissioner Berto, you were next, and then Commissioner Hilliard.
Yeah, question for staff in terms of, is there ever a scenario where we have an agenda item with an applicant and, the scheduling become, and the requirement for them to be here and there's back and forth with scheduling? Has it ever fell through? That would be my only reasoning to kind of consider the hybrid model if it's had any strain on getting things on the agenda or having an applicant come here in a timely manner.
Nothing has put a strain on us so far. As far as an applicant who questioned, our first meeting back in person, we had the 255 Margarita application in front of us. So you may all recall what that one was about. And that applicant decided, well, I can't be there in person. If I can't join by remote, I'm just, you can do it. I want to delay my app, was trying to cause a whole bunch of delays and stuff like that, which were unnecessary. That's the only one that I can think of. The only time I would think that it's not really applications. If we hit a hot button issue with an MSR, you potentially could get a lot of people wanting to show up, and that could potentially put a strain on staff of how do we monitor a whole bunch of people on Zoom, monitor a room that might have a few people in it. Because we're just personally bluntly not used to that type of a situation. We've had it a couple of times in the early days of our MSRs. I think Jaron has done an excellent job of keeping those controversies out of our MSRs these days, but that doesn't mean that a future one couldn't have something like that in there. So that is one aspect. If it's day-to-day regular meetings, I'm not concerned about it, to be blunt with you. It's going to be that offshoot one, that one-time thing where we are just not trained ourselves because we don't have to deal with it, of that meeting where we're having to monitor a room and a Zoom on a very hostile issue. But like I said, those are very rare and don't really happen here in Marin County. But if it does, staff will figure out how to deal with it if we do hybrid.
So I guess what I would say to that, and thank you for that, that's
Yeah.
helpful in terms of my thought process. I'm hearing, kind of both benefits and, extra work for staff in some cases. And as I weight these things, I always kind of land on, make whatever we do in the public realm accessible as possible to the people, right? So in that way, I think, hybrid's good. At the same time, I'm aware that there have been very few people here, both during my tenure and over the years historically. And so I don't want to kind of do something that seems great ideologically, but really has no operational function, right? As far as, so that's why I focused in terms of hybrid allowance, focus more on the applicants or anybody who has business before us. Because if there's a issue that prevents them from being here at a certain, at this place at a certain time, then, maybe having the hybrid option just makes things a little smoother. As far as the, concern about that one meeting when we're discussing an MSR and a lot of people come out, like you said, those are offshoots. So there are things we could do to do that. I'm very skilled in Zoom, so I could help Jaren monitor the platform if that would be appropriate, or whatever. Again, I think, you know, making it more accessible, but in a way that doesn't overburden staff, I think is what I'm looking at.
Okay, and Commissioner Murray has another thought.
Yep. So I worked for quite a few different cities, and current city, there's a ADA access request. So prior to a meeting, if you need special accommodation, then you request this in time. And I'm feeling this is kind of almost in that realm, is that we're, again, limited staff. If we're going to burden them with this, then we need to make sure people aren't sick or on vacation or some issue where we have that backup to do it. And I do think it'd be one of those things that kind of telegraph, say, hey, we need, we're an applicant, we're gonna be on vacation that week, and we're gonna have to call this in remotely, or we're an interested party in the public and we would like to participate in this particular meeting, but we'll have to do it remotely. So I agree that we should try to be as flexible as possible and accommodating as we can, but I think just to regularly do this, it might be kind of encumbrance. And I've seen the ones with the owls and other things, and it does seem to be a little difficult. So again, I totally realize, I think at one point we had like 1.5 staff. So now it's really great to see Claire here, and welcome, Claire. But I appreciate that. And I've seen LAFCo kind of struggle. So I believe we have a great staff and they will do what we ask them to do. But I think that might be a fair middle ground to offer that up with advance notice if that's needed.
I have a couple of thoughts, but alternate Commissioner Hilliard has some more thoughts.
I know I can't vote, but I got to talk. All right. I think we are a public agency. And what a public agency is service to the public. And when we have any kind of issues, we should have it open to the public. And the best way we can do, possibly. And hybrid, I think we should require people who have an application to be here. It may not affect the outcome of your decision based on facts, but I think they're actually advocates for their own application. They should be here and they should have access if they can't be here. As far as our legal counsel, I read the report and I agree that it would be, in my opinion, up to the chair, up to you, the executive officer, or any member of the board, if they wanted access to the legal services before or after the meeting, that could happen. But as a general rule, I'm not sure that we need our legal counsel here other than via Zoom, because it saves us taxpayers money. But we are a public agency, so I mean, I hate to say it, sorry, staff, but if we do have a big deal meeting, we have to accommodate that. That's my opinion.
Okay, so I want to add, well, I'm the chair, I should wait. Go ahead, Commissioner Chin.
No, I was simply going to say that I concur with Commissioner Hilliard and Smith to the extent that, you know, as public agencies, I think the optics are a little different post-COVID. And there's a general expectation that public meetings now become available to anybody irrespective of, you know, where they're at physically. But I do agree with the other commissioners in stating that, you know, our applicants and staff need to be here as required or as needed.
Great. And Commissioner Lucan.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement with all of that. That said, the one that I'm maybe a little bit on the fence on is requiring an applicant to be here. I'm probably in the camp of give them that option. If I'm an applicant and I've got business before LAFCo, I'm showing up in person. I'm not going to just opt for a little 3x3 screen on a computer, but maybe some folks do. And that, you know, I think that is telling, but I don't know what the best practice is on that and whether or not if you go to this model, can you in fact require an applicant to be here in person? That might be a question for legal to weigh in on. We know there's some staff savings for us by having, you know, our legal counsel on Zoom, but for applicants, when things get to the point where they're also hiring their own lawyers that are maybe all having to participate as well, there could be some savings for the applicants or those opposed to the applicants if they need to bring their lawyers on and they're all on Zoom. I think that's us providing a better service for the community, especially if they've gotten to an issue that's heated and is coming before LAFCo. They're probably already, 1 or 2 or 3 years behind where they wanted to be and paying more money than they wanted to be. So being able to have their lawyers joined by Zoom is could be a benefit for them as well. But I'd be curious to get our legal's opinion on whether or not, who can you require be here if we do.
Can I
go
weigh in
hybrid?
first before we do that? I very much feel like Catherine Hilliard, Larry, Eric, Steve, we're a public agency. We need to be available, and that means we need to be available hybrid. I just want to share one anecdote. So up until recently, we had one town clerk in Fairfax. Our meetings tend to start at 5 or 6 and go to 1 often. They very rarely get done before midnight. And our town clerk has been managing Zoom as well as keeping track of everything that's going on, taking extra notes to compare to the person who writes our minutes. It's not a heavy lift. It really isn't. It's probably at first it's a little challenging. And I think Jaren clearly has the capability to deal with this. One of the things I would suggest is we go to Zoom webinars versus regular Zoom, because regular Zoom can be Zoom bombed. And we've seen things like pornographic material. This happened in the city of Davis. It happened in Fairfax at a workshop when people were using regular Zoom. It's not a heavy lift. And as far as the issue of the applicant, I'm just going to weigh in. I think we should have at least one member of the applicant here. It's just like going to a planning commission where these projects can be very important. You don't necessarily need to have their attorneys or whatever, but I don't want to see applicants on a cruise or on a vacation in Hawaii calling in, because it's not that important. The other thing I will say is that LAFCo is kind of a niche organization, and those of us who are involved kind of understand it. But wouldn't it be nice if more people in the public actually watched us, even just to understand what this LAFCO is about? So I don't think it's a lot of work. And I personally feel that for the most part, our attorney could be present where there are important cases. But like a meeting like tonight, I'm not really sure that it was necessary. The other thing I just want to add, for those MSR meetings, if we do get a contentious one, those are exactly the kind of meetings that you want the public to see. I mean, but I know that we do our homework and we work out these issues beforehand. And that's why we haven't seen that since, I believe, the Nevada one that Commissioner Arnold really worked on and staff really worked on to smooth that out. So I think it's important for us to really, I hate to use this word, be transparent. Okay. Thank you, legal counsel.
Yeah, of course, Chair. Yeah, just to answer the question, so I do believe we could require an applicant to attend in person, and the reason for that is that if you enable the hybrid meetings, the way it's normally set up is it's set up as an accommodation for the public, with the recognition that if we have technical issues or something, it's not a guarantee that they'll be able to access the meeting. So it could be framed to an applicant in that regard. I will acknowledge that all of the agencies that I work with where we attend remotely or use the hybrid format don't have a similar requirement. So I believe you could require it, but I will confirm. And if for some reason I'm incorrect, we'll follow up with Ms. Subramanian at your next meeting.
Okay, just one follow-up question. We've had issues where everything went down and we had to close the meeting. And so that's one of the things you run into.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why if you do go hybrid, I would recommend that it be hybrid as an accommodation to members of the public and not necessarily part of the meeting. So you'll remember during the COVID years when you had all or partial, that's actually was a requirement of the rules we were operating under at the time they were in effect, that if there was a loss of connection, the meeting couldn't move forward. Here, unless you had a commissioner participating remotely, the same rules would not apply. Remote access would simply be an accommodation for the public.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lucan?
Just one follow-up to just checking when you do that research. If an applicant is a no-show, we still have to decide the item regardless. And potentially that applicant could join as a member of the public and we wouldn't be able to limit their 3 minutes of time. We might be able to say, well, you don't get 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or however long an applicant normally gets, but maybe let's look into all of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. They could still speak during public comment, but it could be a consideration for the commission. Another issue you could have is in your bylaws, you could simply continue those items if there wasn't an applicant.
Okay, that's a one option to consider. Thank you.
Of course, subject to the time restrictions in
Yeah, there are some time restrictions, and because we meet every other month, those time restrictions may not always, there's some of them are 90 days. And so depending on when things started, every other month meetings may not allow us to continue without taking some sort of action at the meeting.
Okay, and I believe Commissioner Murray had another.
Yeah, just for legal. So with the technology, can we require a secure platform, what we view as a secure platform? And I think there's been several comments about applicants kind of misusing the remote call-in, Zoom in situation. And I think Barbara brought up the UC Davis situation or City of Davis situation. So how do we can we have the highest technology possible to secure that?
Yeah, so we would use whatever technology staff had the ability to use. And I know we're using Zoom currently, and I don't want to speak.
Right now we use a lower level of Zoom because we don't have to pay that much a month for it. When you start getting into some of these other ones, they have very high costs associated with them. So I would want to have staff can do some research and find out what those costs are actually to do that. I'm happy to do that. That would be like my only one concern. If we aren't really ever having people show up, I get there's a concern that someone could bomb us and try and do something inappropriate. We can be pretty quick and get rid of that stuff because we have to let them into the room type of a thing. So there are some security levels here. They're not necessarily that highest level. So the question comes is, do we pay for that higher level of service and pay more money for a very rare situation that probably doesn't occur with us because no one knows we exist?
Jason, just a follow-up. Do we have a counter on our meetings that are available to anyone to view and how much participation?
I would have to look to see if our website tracks the individual page that we put the stuff on. I do know that YouTube tracks it. And you can see how many views are on YouTube. You will see that like the average meeting has maybe 10 views on it, and maybe it goes up a little bit when we're trying to hire staff or when there's a commissioner looking to get appointed to the public seat. Maybe they go back and watch a few meetings. But outside of that, or at least on our YouTube channel, we don't have that many views on it. It's really just us watching it and putting it up on our website.
So I'm hoping we can kind of wrap this up. We can hold off on the decision on the applicants on where we go with that. And we can decide we want our attorney here or not. But if somebody'd like to make a motion so we can wrap this up, because I think we've talked about it for quite a while.
Motion to just continue or?
Well, you could, if you're interested in saying we go to hybrid meetings, you could make that motion and leave the other parts off. Or if you don't want hybrid meetings, you could make that motion. Or if you just want to continue it to the next meeting. I mean, I hate to see us continue something that is relatively simple.
I mean, if I may.
Yes.
Listening for consensus around here, it seems like there's quite a few of us that believe that we should be as transparent as possible and do it. So I will make a motion to continue with the hybrid option, though requiring that applicants appear in person. Because I think that's what I heard in terms of general consensus from the body as we've had discussion here.
And did you want to add something about the attorney or legal counsel? That was part of it. Do we want
If I need to, I will. If it's fine for the attorney to not be here, I would add that to the motion.
I think there was a good suggestion that could be a decision between the chair and the director based off of the meeting. I'd be fine if you'd be open to putting that in the motion. I thought that was a really good suggestion.
friendly amendment?
I will accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. Does somebody want to second that?
A second.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, any abstentions?
I had further comments, so I'm abstaining because that's actually recommendation number 2 on our list. So abstain for me.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Murray, I missed that. I just thought we needed to wrap it up. So it looks like we're in agreement with hybrid. For now, we'll require applicants to appear. Our attorney will research whether or not we need to revisit that, and the chair can decide with the executive officer on the basis of the meeting whether or not we need our legal counsel in person. So it looks like we're moving on. Thank you all very much. Good discussion. To our budget update.
So executive officer's report, I will run through all these items pretty quickly together as one. I will continue to look around the room. If someone has a question, please stop me. Otherwise, I will just run through them. Before I actually get to the 4 items that are on here, I wanted to quickly, as you all have already met Claire, but I did want to formally introduce her to the commission. She is our new clerk. She is a Marin native, born and raised here, went to school elsewhere, but came back after school. So very happy to have someone who knows Marin County very well joining our staff. I think she's a good addition, and so far has been extremely knowledgeable in picking stuff up, and has exceeded my expectations up to this point in time as to where I would expect her to be in learning a brand new job that is a very unique organization like ours. So I'm very happy to have Claire on board with us now.
Could Claire maybe tell the commission a little bit about your background? And welcome, Claire.
Thank you. I went to University of Oregon and got my bachelor's in science in urban planning and public policy. I live in Corte Madera, and I did go to high school in San Francisco. I went to Convent of the Sacred Heart. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Claire. Welcome.
All right, so getting back to our items on the agenda itself, you have your budget update in front of you. As always, we have a few items that are over budget for this time of year, our general insurance and our membership dues, because those all get paid at the beginning of the fiscal year. So those ones are for the most part done. I think there's one more membership. I think CSDA comes at the beginning of the calendar year. So that one will go up a little bit when that occurs. So you will see that we're above budget on that. You will also see that we are above the amount that we should have spent this time of year if you were to pace it out over 12 months for our conference. That item we will likely end up being over budget if we keep it at where it's at by the end of the year, because we still have to pay for hotel rooms for the Marin LAFCo conference, which I'll get to in a minute. And we also have a staff workshop. I will come back to you probably at our October meeting once we've had a chance to close out the books for last year. We will have a little bit of leftover money from last year. So what I will be likely recommending is that we increase our conference budget by a little bit, by $2,000-3,000 once I've had a chance to review what the numbers are looking like, and put some of the money that we have left over from last fiscal year to do that, and then the rest will go to the carry forward fund. We've done that type of stuff in the past with changing line items around when we see something new might be coming up. I was not anticipating as many commissioners having an interest in going to the conference, which is why we put it at the level we did. But with so many new commissioners, I didn't want to discourage anyone from going. So we have quite a few folks going for part or all of the conference down in Monterey, which I think is actually a good thing for us as a commission. So I have not discouraged anyone who wants to go. And if anyone hasn't told me yet that they want to go, we'll find space for you and make room for you. Although hotel rooms are coming up quickly on that, but I'll get more on the Marin LAFCo update when I get to that part. And so I'll come back to you at the end of the day with an update. The next item is current and pending proposals. For the first time in a very, very long time, we have absolutely nothing in the cooker. We have plenty of people who have talked to us over the years that may come to us at some point in time and they just randomly show up. But this is probably the driest period I've seen since I've been with LAFCo of not having a single new application come in. And the main reason I bring that up is that will potentially have a small impact on next year's budget. We do use our applications from this year as part of the carry forward amount for next year. So next year's carry forward amount may not be as high as it has been in previous years if we don't get the applications in. And this is for those of you that are new to LAFCo, the very reason why I stopped trying to balance our budget off of applications coming in this year and move that to what we help pay off for next year. And this is the perfect example of why, if this year ends up being a small year in applications, we don't want to be coming in under budget and not having enough money in our accounts to pay bills and stuff like that. So this is the perfect example. Hopefully this year, hopefully we'll get the applications in, but if we don't, that'll be our next, as I like to say, that's next year's problem, not this year's problem for our budget. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, Jason, so you mentioned that there's no applications in the hopper. And so I guess what are our future meetings look like?
If we have no applications in the hopper, the only other thing that drives us for the next few meetings is when are MSRs being done and like when are we having those meetings? So to be perfectly fair, and I apologize, this might sound a little mean to some of you, but if you had completed my review at the April meeting, we would not be meeting tonight because we could have done my contract at the June meeting, done the fee schedule at the June meeting, and we would be off tonight because we have no applications in front of us.
Well, my thought here is that, is there anything operationally within our LAFCo that, you know, now's a good time to kind of open up the hood and take a look at something that may need board approval? So to take advantage of some of the downtime with respect to the applications, and maybe not even meet as a full board, but we have the 3 subcommittees, that may be an opportunity to kind of do some priority development at the committee level, or, you know, take a look at some things that maybe you've noticed over the last few years, like, gosh, you know, I wish we could do this. And maybe this is a time to have those discussions, since there's not a lot.
That is what our workshop is planned for, because that is like a 3-hour discussion to have all that. Granted, maybe we could figure out a way to break up the workshop into different pieces. And if there's a night, then we say, hey, we're going to take a 2-hour period to do it this night type of a thing. That is much more of a workshop type thing, and it's hard to plan into a calendar like ours because we meet every other month. So I get what you're saying, and I appreciate that. I just think that those are better done at one time in a workshop. Our committees only operate when they're needed, and there's really not a high need for them at this point.
That's my thought, because I was going to mention we have the workshop coming up, and again, that's usually kind of like a retreat type thing where we throw ideas at the wall or say, here are the things we really need to prioritize as an agency. My thinking is, coming out of, if we have a really robust discussion at that workshop, then there probably will be stuff for the committees to kind of take on, and you know, things that we want to look at.
Correct.
Just a question. I noticed we had no MSRs on the work plan. Are there MSRs that you have contemplated?
Well, we have our MSR work. We have our whole schedule for the MSRs. We're currently working on the Southern Marin Sewer agencies. Jaron has started to get some final internal drafts done that we will soon be sharing with the agencies. I'm going to look to Jaron. Do you think by the next meeting that'll be ready, or will that partly depend on when we get comments back?
The plan is for that to be presented to the commission in October.
There you go. And that's pretty much on schedule from when we did our last one. It's like we're on that schedule right now.
So maybe one thing at our next meeting, it would be worthwhile to plot out the MSRs that are in the works. Because remember, we have a lot of new commissioners, and you know, Lou and Craig have been on here, and Dennis has been on since the beginning of time, but not everyone has. So it might be a good idea to just show people what's coming up in MSRs.
Sure. I was planning to have that be part of our workshop, but we can do that at the October meeting as well, if you like.
Okay.
So moving on to the LAFCo workshop, which was actually the next item. We have scheduled that. Thank you for everyone who helped arrange your schedules or possibly rearrange your schedules. No date ever works perfectly for everybody, but I think we got the date that works for the most number of people. My apologies. Hopefully if the date didn't work for you, maybe you can figure out how to rearrange schedules, but if not, we will greatly miss you. That is going to be on January 12th, which is a Friday, from 9 to 12. We'll be in this room. At least for now, schedule it from 9 to 12. We might have a slight variant in there, but we won't go past 12 because I want to respect everyone's time. We probably won't go till 12, but please don't try and schedule meetings at like 11:30 or 12 thinking that, oh, we'll be done at 11 and you'll be okay. To the degree you can try not to schedule anything until at least 12, that would be great. One of the things that we will actually be doing is we're going to be using our shared services agreement with Santa Clara County, excuse me. Santa Cruz, thank you. Sorry, I always get those two confused for some reason. Joe is going to be coming up here who's their executive officer. He has lots of LAFCo experience. He's he's gone all the way from an intern to an executive officer, all that time within the LAFCo world at multiple LAFCos. So he has lots of knowledge and experience from other places. When I started pricing it out, you might recall that for those of you that have been around a while, at least the former executive officer for Cal LAFCO is Pamela Miller. She's charging, over $3,000 to do a half-day workshop. Napa just did one with her. Very good workshop. I've got no doubt in her skills. We will probably pay a third of that because of our shared services agreement. So I feel that is an excellent first use for us to use that. And Joe is more than happy to come up here. He actually happens to like that it's on a Friday because he might just stay up here with his partner and their new baby and have a weekend in Marin after they're done with us. So that is a positive thing there. We will get more details to you. One of the things I do plan, since we're going to be meeting in October, was I want you all to start putting your thinking caps on. What are the items you would want to have discussed at a workshop that'll be on the agenda? We won't be physically discussing them or debating them or, having any sort of lengthy version of it, but it's more to give me and Joe an opportunity to understand what is it that you want to be looking at and discussing so we can figure out how to properly plan that workshop in a way that works for the people that are attending it. So moving on to the last item on the report, although it won't be the last thing we talk about, is the Cal LAFCo update. There is a conference going on in October. So far I have Commissioners Kohler, Hillard, Murray, Smith, Chu, and myself attending. If anyone else,
Steve Berto is also the alternate for the voting.
he hasn't actually given me any information so I can sign him up. If he's going, he needs to return my emails about that.
Talk about being put on blast.
Sorry.
Damn.
I do call people out when they don't return if you are going, we do need to get you into a room and stuff like that. If anyone else is looking to go, please let me know so we can get you signed up. And I will be happy to do so. So you're aware, I will not be there on Wednesday, the first day of the conference. This is a reminder, I've been invited to the California Fire Chiefs Association to present on the Southern Marin, Southern Mill Valley merger. They have felt that was such a great opportunity. They wanted me to come down and talk about how that worked and operated. So I will be on that on Wednesday, but I will be showing up on Thursday because Thursday afternoon, I am currently signed up. Someone volunteered me to be a moderator for one of the panels on discussing EO commission relationships. So I'll be the moderator of that. Thankfully, I don't actually have to speak about the relationships. I just have to moderate the panel that will be having that discussion. But they have quite a few good agenda items of breakout sessions and general sessions to do. So if anyone else is looking to go, please speak up. We do have more room, although hotel rooms are quickly filling up. So if I called your name out, you should have gotten a hotel reservation straight from the hotel. I signed you up and used your personal emails to do that. So let's make sure we get those into the system. And then that is all I have for that part. The last part, which is technically not on the agenda, but you may be aware that we recently updated to a new GIS mapping system online. I'm going to hand things over to Jaron, who's going to give you a very quick show of what the old system looked like and what the new system looked like, so you kind of can have an understanding of how we spent our money.
Yeah, so since the commission approved the new update, we have been working in collaboration with our consultants in Queenie and Pasadena. Our head consultant that we've been working with, Jason Sweeney, has been wonderful to work with. You can tell he's super invested in making sure that he gives us the best possible work product that he can. I would say in going back and forth with him over the past few months, he is just really invested in making sure that everything is as clean as it can be, even going in and cleaning up old lines that had been in old shape files. So what you'll see here is the old system from Marin map. Let me try to move this out of the way. So just so we can get a comparison, this is what we had been looking at before. Today, this is all now housed within our website. On this link right here, we can come into our map viewer. And this is now what we are met with. We have all of our possible layers for the districts and the agencies that we oversee over here. as well as their spheres of influence that we can put on the map. We have a easy kind of little crash course over here for anybody visiting on how to use the tools. And then the addition of this identified districts tool. So I'm just going to put in a completely random address that definitely isn't my house. And this will pop up and we can see this pin is dropped here. Zoom to it. Once in there, I can come to this report tab and it will open up and show me everything that address is tied to as far as a public agency is concerned. From there, I can then print this or just open it up as a PDF. So it's all just a fold out report in front of me. As far as just user interface and user friendliness in comparison to the old system, it's going to be a lot easier for Joe Public to use. So we're very happy with it. Again, very happy with Cinquini and Passerino and the work that they have done. And then in addition to that, there is also, I would say this is probably going to be for less than 1% of users. This is our GeoHub that houses all of our layers, as all of the GIS layers are now our data that we're controlling. So anybody can come in here, find a layer, download it, create their map as they want to within our layers. So this is just something else, again, is going to be used by maybe less than 1% of people, but it is publicly available for anybody to use. So.
Commissioner Murray?
Jaren, thank you. That's really great to see all the different layers of services for particular addresses. That'll be helpful. Just our JPAs, are those within that layer? And then non-LAFCo, these are bridge transportation districts, school districts. I think it might be good to just explain to the general public that these aren't in LAFCo's current purview.
Right. So what you will actually see in here as we load this back up is that there is another tab here. I don't need to restore that. For these other boundaries. If we open up our other boundaries here, we can see that there are other districts, other public agencies outside of what we were looking at, as well as zip codes, so on and so forth. So we do offer things outside of just our purview for those layers. But as far as the JPA is concerned, we do not have a JPA specific layer. I would say one of the difficulties within that is the size of some of them and the layering over other things that ends up kind of causing some visual clutter that makes it a bit difficult.
Maybe just a definition or a link to the JPAs that have registered with us, so folks who could do their own research. That might be helpful.
What you're referring to is actually available off of our website directly.
Okay.
There are certain, for those that aren't aware, certain types of JPAs have to submit their organizing documents, and anytime they update that with LAFCo, we do keep that on our website in a different location. That's not really a GIS layer thing. That's more of a physical documents. And we do have that information. I can't remember if the information is physically on our website or whether they have to reach out to us and put it on there, but that's something that we can look at for our website itself.
Thank you. Alternate Commissioner Hilliard, did you have a question?
Go over the route again, how to get there. It's district map viewer.
Yeah. And one of the things I will add is Marin Map still exists, and that's where a lot of like some of the JPA layer stuff is actually over there. If you go to Marin Map, they now have, where they used to have the LAFCo link, it now sends you to our website rather than going to what Jaren showed you. That still exists in the background and they haven't actually taken it down. But you actually can't get to that unless you have special knowledge of how to get there.
Great. Thank you very much. That looks excellent, and looks like we've come into the 21st century, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. But we are at Jaren didn't show my favorite part, which is when you actually zoom in on the Marin Map and you start looking at streets, you can't actually tell where street lines are and where they're not. the new system actually gives you very clear indication of where street maps are, where buildings are, where everything is located. So it's a much better system. And with that, I believe we are wrapping up the executive officer's report.
Thank you. And are there any commissioner announcements and requests? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.